At a family dinner, my fiancée declared, "My ex will always be part of my life. If you don't like it, don't marry me." I smiled. A week later, the wedding was cancelled. And she finally learned why. I should have known something was off when Seraphine made that joke at my mother's dinner table. We were sitting there, my whole family gathered for my mom's 60th birthday, and Seraphine was holding court like she always did. She had this way of commanding attention, not demanding it, but drawing it naturally, like gravity. Brand architect and experiential PR specialist for luxury clients. Basically, she made rich companies feel special about themselves. "The secret to a good relationship," she said, waving her wine glass while my sister hung on every word, "is training your man right from the start. Soren here? He knows better than to ask where I am when I'm working late." She laughed, that crystalline sound that used to make my chest tight with want. "I've got him so well trained, he doesn't even check my phone when it buzzes at 2 a.m. anymore." Everyone laughed. My dad slapped my shoulder. "Smart man," he said. "Happy wife, happy life." I smiled. Held my beer. Took a sip. Said nothing. But something cracked inside me that night. Not broke, cracked. Like when you're testing contaminated soil samples and you see that first hairline fracture in the container seal. You know it's compromised, but you don't know how bad until you really look. I'm Dr. Soren Vale. Environmental toxicologist. I specialize in corporate contamination cases, the ones where companies poison groundwater and pretend they didn't know. I'm good at finding things people bury. It's literally my job to detect what's hidden beneath the surface. That night, after we got home to our townhouse, Seraphine was glowing from all the attention. She kicked off her heels and poured herself another wine. "Your family adores me," she said, not asking. "They do," I agreed, loosening my tie. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She snatched it up fast, too fast. Turned it face down. "Just work," she said, but her thumb was already moving to delete something. "At 11 on a Saturday?" She gave me that look. The one that said I was crossing a line we'd established. You know how my clients are. Luxury brands don't sleep. I nodded. Went to shower. But in the mirror, I saw her step out onto our balcony to make a call, cupping her hand over her mouth. 3 years together. 6 months engaged. Wedding in 4 months. I'd bought the ring with cash from a contamination settlement I'd won against a chemical company. She'd cried when I proposed. Posted it 17 times across every platform. The ring got its own photo shoot. The crack got wider over the next few days. Little things. She'd close her laptop when I walked by. She had receipts for restaurants I'd never been to, always client meetings. She started keeping her purse in her car instead of the hallway table. Tuesday, she worked late again. Wednesday too. Thursday, she said she was meeting her ex, Bram, for coffee. "The shadow content guy?" I asked. That's what he called himself, shadow content broker. He managed online controversies, made problems disappear for influencers. He's got a potential client who needs PR work. Might be good money. She kissed my forehead. "Don't wait up." She came home at 1 a.m. Showered immediately. Fell asleep with her back to me. Friday morning, I had to grab something from her car. She'd borrowed my parking pass for a downtown meeting. I popped the trunk to check for my gym bag. Wasn't there. But something else caught my eye. The spare tire compartment looked off, the cover wasn't sitting flush. Environmental toxicology teaches you to notice disturbances. Soil that's been turned when everything else is compact. Water that's too clear when it should have sediment. A spare tire cover that's been lifted recently when there's no reason for it. I looked around the parking garage. Empty. Early morning quiet. I lifted the cover. There was a phone there. Latest model. Fully charged. Screen locked. But it was on. And as I held it, a text preview popped up. Wire confirmation received. Your usual cut is ready for pickup. Stop being paranoid, S doesn't suspect anything. See you tonight. B. I put the phone back exactly as I found it. Closed the trunk. Went to work. At my desk, testing water samples for mercury contamination, my hands were steady. My mind was clear. I had some digging to do. I knew exactly who to call. Rowan Ito worked out of a converted loft in the industrial district. Ex-cyber operations analyst who went private after getting tired of government bureaucracy. We'd met on a contamination case 2 years ago, a tech company dumping heavy metals while their executives played dumb. Rowan had pulled their internal communications, proved they knew exactly what they were doing. Dr. Vale, Rowan answered on the second ring. Been a while, I need your particular expertise. Personal matter this time. How personal? The kind where I need absolute discretion. We met that evening at a dim sum place neither of us had been to before. Rowan was already there, corner booth, back to the wall. Always careful. Your fiancé, Rowan said after I explained. It wasn't a question. How'd you know? You're not wearing your engagement ring. Most men don't, but you did. I remember from last time we met. You were proud of it. I looked at my bare finger. Hadn't realized I'd taken it off. What's your instinct telling you? Rowan asked. That something's contaminated. I just need to know how deep it goes. Rowan nodded. Standard surveillance package runs $5,000. Full digital forensics is another $3,000. Cash only. Do both. And I need everything documented. The next 3 days, I played normal. Kissed Seraphine goodbye each morning. Asked about her day each night. She mentioned Bram twice more, always casually, always testing my reaction. I gave her nothing. Rowan worked fast. By day 4, I was sitting in that same loft, looking at a wall of monitors. Your fiancé's interesting, Rowan said, pulling up financial records. On paper, she's successful. 6-figure PR contracts, legitimate clients. But look here. The screen showed bank transfers. Small amounts. $5,000 here, $8,000 there. Always just under the reporting threshold. She's invoicing her own company for consulting services. The invoices are vague: brand strategy development, market research analysis. The money goes out, hits 3 different accounts, then lands here. Another screen. An account under Bram Thorne's business, Obscura Digital Solutions. The ex-boyfriend. Not so ex, Rowan said, clicking another file. I pulled their communication metadata. They text approximately 40 times per day. She deletes them, but the carrier logs remain. And there's this. Security footage from an ATM camera. Seraphine and Bram, 2 weeks ago. She handed him an envelope. He counted bills, nodded, put his hand on her lower back. Not a friendly touch. Possessive. There's more. Rowan pulled up Obscura Digital's business filing. Bram's operation is basically reputation management for people who shouldn't have reputations. He makes scandals disappear, manufactures alibis, creates false narratives. And Seraphine's been funding it. For how long? At least 18 months. Maybe longer. The pattern becomes consistent around the time you two moved in together. I stared at the data. In contamination cases, we call this the plume, the spread of poison from its source. But this wasn't groundwater. This was my life. I need more, I said. I need to know what they're actually doing with the money. Give me another week. I'll dig deeper. But Soren. Rowan paused. You sure you want to know everything? In my field, half knowledge is dangerous. You either identify all the contamination or it comes back to poison you later. That night, Seraphine was practically glowing at dinner. She'd landed a new client, a sustainable jewelry brand with deep pockets. $250,000 retainer, she said, refilling her wine. They want the full experience package. Brand story, launch events, influencer partnerships. Congratulations, I said. That's huge. Bram actually helped. He knows their creative director from another project. There it was again. Bram. Always Bram. That's lucky, I said. She studied my face. You're not jealous, are you? Of Bram? That's ancient history, babe. We just work well together. No jealousy. Just curious how ex-boyfriends become business partners. Modern relationships, she laughed. We're all adults here. After she fell asleep, her phone buzzed. Then again. 3 times in quick succession. I watched her face in the dark. She didn't stir. My phone vibrated. A message from Rowan. Check your encrypted folder. Now. I slipped out to the bathroom, opened the secure app. A video file. Timestamp, tonight, 10:47 p.m. I pressed play. There was Seraphine at a private airport lounge I recognized. She'd supposedly been at a client dinner. But she wasn't with clients. She was with Bram. They were at a corner table. She was counting cash, separating it into neat stacks. He was typing on his phone, documenting each bundle. Then she leaned over and kissed him. Not a friendly peck. The kind of kiss I thought was just for me. The video kept rolling. Bram pulled out his phone, showed her something on the screen. She laughed, that same laugh from my mother's dinner table, but sharper. Predatory. 3 more months, she said, her voice thin but audible through Rowan's surveillance equipment. Then we're set. 3 months. 3 months until our wedding. I closed the video. Went back to bed. Stared at the ceiling while Seraphine slept beside me, her breathing even and untroubled. The next morning, I called in sick to work. First time in 2 years. You never get sick, my lab partner said. Must be serious. It was. I drove to Rowan's loft with a thermos of coffee and a clear head. We had work to do. I've been tracking the money deeper, Rowan said, pulling up spreadsheets. Your fiancée isn't just funding Bram. She's running a whole operation through him. The screen showed invoice after invoice. Seraphine's PR company billing clients for work. Then subcontractor invoices from Bram's company for the same amounts, minus her cut. But here's the interesting part, Rowan continued. I found one of her clients. Etta Quill. Runs a sustainable heirloom business, preserving and selling restored vintage pieces. She hired Seraphine for a complete rebrand 8 months ago. And? Seraphine took a $200,000 deposit. Delivered exactly nothing. I called Etta, pretending to be a potential client asking for references. She's been trying to get her money back for 6 months. Seraphine keeps sending fake progress reports, mock-ups that are just stolen designs from other companies. My contamination training kicked in. When you find one infected site, you look for others in the same watershed. How many others? At least 3 that I've found so far. Same pattern. Large deposits, fake deliverables, money funneled to Bram. Total theft? About $700,000. I felt that cold clarity that comes when you finally understand the scope of contamination. This wasn't an affair. This wasn't even simple fraud. This was systematic. There's something else, Rowan said, pulling up a PDF. I hacked Bram's cloud storage. Found this. A contract. No, an NDA. Between Seraphine and Bram, dated 2 years ago. She was paying him $15,000 a month to maintain professional distance in public settings and perform assigned social roles as needed. She's paying him to pretend to be her ex, I said. While they're actually partners. The perfect cover. Nobody suspects the ex-boyfriend who shows up at parties, makes small talk, leaves early. Meanwhile, they're running a fraud ring using her PR company as the front. I thought about all the times Bram had been at events. Friendly. Harmless. Shaking my hand, congratulating me on the engagement. Playing the role of the good ex who'd moved on. I need to talk to Etta Quill, I said. Already arranged. She thinks you're a forensic accountant looking into Seraphine's business practices. Meetings at 2. Etta Quill's workshop was in a converted warehouse, filled with restored furniture and vintage pieces. She was in her 50s, silver hair pulled back, hands stained from wood polish. You're investigating Seraphine LaRue? She asked before I'd even sat down. I'm documenting her business practices. Business practices, Etta laughed bitterly. Is that what we're calling theft now? She showed me everything. The initial contract. The promises. The fake progress reports with stolen designs. The excuses that got more elaborate each month. She was so convincing, Etta said. Knew exactly what to say. How my brand could reach the luxury market. How we'd tell the story of each piece. I mortgaged my building for that deposit. Did you go to the police? With what? She always has explanations. The work is in progress. The delays are strategic. And her boyfriend, fiancé now, I heard, is some hotshot scientist. Gives her credibility. That hit like ice water. I was part of the con. My reputation, my stability, I was her cover story. Would you be willing to sign an affidavit? I asked. In a heartbeat. I spent 3 more hours with Etta, documenting everything. Then met with 2 other victims Rowan had found. Same story. Same pattern. Seraphine's promise, Seraphine's theft, Seraphine's excuses. By evening, I had 4 sworn affidavits and enough evidence to bury her. I got home to find Seraphine cooking dinner. Actual cooking, which she rarely did. Feeling better? She asked, kissing my cheek. Much better. Good. Because we need to talk about the joint investment account. I want to move some things around. For tax purposes. I watched her plate the food, humming softly. Sure, I said. How much were you thinking? Maybe 60,000? Just temporarily. I smiled. Let me check the balance first. I already knew what I'd find when I logged in. The account was already 60,000 lighter. She'd been bleeding it slowly. 5,000 here, 3,000 there. Transfers labeled wedding venue deposit and catering advance and photography retainer. All legitimate looking. All fake. I showed her the screen. Looks like we're down quite a bit already. Her face didn't change. Right, the wedding expenses. But this would be separate. An investment opportunity Bram found, completely above board. Some tech startup doing sustainable packaging. Bram. Always Bram. The ghost she'd hired to haunt our relationship. Sounds interesting, I said. Maybe we should meet with him together. Go over the details. A microsecond of panic crossed her face. He's really busy. You know how these venture types are. I insist. If we're investing our wedding money, I want to understand where it's going. She kissed me. Long and deep. The kind of kiss that used to shut down my questions. You trust me, don't you? She whispered. Completely, I lied. That night, while she showered, I made a call. Thaddeus Voss answered on the first ring. Forensic litigation strategist, essentially, someone who builds airtight legal cases before the lawyers even get involved. I'd worked with him on a contamination lawsuit where the company tried to hide assets offshore. Dr. Vale. I was wondering when you'd call. You were expecting me? Rowan Ito mentioned you might need my particular services. I've reviewed the preliminary files. And? Wire fraud. Embezzlement. Conspiracy to commit fraud. The evidence is solid, but you need to move carefully. She's already positioned to run. What do you mean? The cryptocurrency wallets. She's been converting the stolen funds to crypto, moving them to wallets controlled by Bram. If she suspects that money disappears forever. I thought about the 60,000 she just asked for. The wedding in 3 months. The timing wasn't coincidental. I want to do this publicly, I said. And legally. Can you freeze the assets? With the right documentation and timing, yes. But we need her to be present when it happens. Otherwise, she'll have time to move everything. An idea formed. The kind that comes from years of setting up contamination containment. You don't just identify the poison, you trap it before it spreads. Our wedding rehearsal dinner, I said. 6 weeks out. What if we did it early? Go on. She's been pushing for a rehearsal at the actual venue. Says we need to practice for the big day. What if I agree? Book the space, invite both families, her clients, everyone. A public execution, Thaddeus said. Legally speaking. Can you have everything ready by then? With what Rowan's gathered and the affidavits you've collected? Absolutely. But you'll need more witnesses. Credible ones. I thought about the journalists who'd covered my contamination cases. One in particular, Miranda Vex, specialized in financial crimes. I can get media there. Then we have a plan. I'll need 2 weeks to prepare the civil freezing order. We'll need a judge's signature, which means filing sealed documents. Can you keep playing along that long? 2 weeks of kissing her good morning. 2 weeks of wedding planning. 2 weeks of watching her text Bram while pretending not to notice. I've been doing it this long, I said. The next morning, I surprised Seraphine with coffee in bed. Let's do the rehearsal dinner, I said. You're right. We should practice. Her face lit up. Really? You seemed hesitant before. I want everything perfect for you. She pulled me down for a kiss. 3 weeks from now? The venue has an opening. Perfect. Invite everyone. Both families, your clients, everyone who matters to us. That's like 70 people. So? We're only doing this once. She was already on her phone, texting. Planning. Not knowing she was planning her own funeral. I spent the next 2 weeks being the perfect fiancé. I agreed to everything. The flowers she wanted. The menu she selected. The photographer she insisted on, who was probably fake too, another invoice to nowhere. Meanwhile, I met with Thaddeus daily. We built the case document by document. Etta Quill agreed to attend. The other victims too. Miranda Vex confirmed she'd be there, officially as A+1. 3 days before the rehearsal, Seraphine came home glowing. Bram's coming to the dinner, she said. Is that okay? He wants to wish us well. Of course, I said. He's part of our story. She hugged me tight. You're amazing. Oh, and babe? That investment opportunity I mentioned? It's time sensitive. We need to wire 50,000 tomorrow. 50? I thought you said 60. She laughed. Even better, right? 50,000 tomorrow, and we triple it in 6 months. I pulled out my phone. Let me transfer it now. I made the transfer. Watched her eyes light up as the confirmation came through. She kissed me like she meant it, or maybe like she'd won something. You won't regret this, she said. I already didn't. Thaddeus had arranged for that account to be monitored. Every dollar she moved would be tracked, documented, evidence. The morning of the rehearsal, Seraphine was up at dawn. Hair appointment. Nail appointment. She'd bought a new dress, white, of course. For practice, she'd said. I put on my suit and drove to the venue early. The Grandview Estate. Old money architecture, new money prices. Seraphine had insisted on it. Thaddeus was already there, setting up in a side room with his paralegal. The freezing order? I asked. Signed by Judge Reeves this morning. The moment you give the signal, her accounts lock. The detective? Plainclothes. Already here, playing the part of catering staff. I walked through the main hall. 70 chairs arranged in perfect rows. The projector I'd requested was set up, connected to my laptop. Seraphine thought it was for the slideshow of our relationship photos. She wasn't wrong. It would show our relationship. Just not how she expected. Guests started arriving at 6. My parents first, my mother fussing over my tie. Seraphine's family next, her mother air kissing everyone, her father already at the bar. Etta Quill arrived, wearing a vintage dress from her collection. She caught my eye, nodded slightly. The other victims filtered in, seated strategically around the room. Miranda Vex came with her date, actually her photographer, camera tucked discreetly in his jacket. Then Seraphine arrived. She looked perfect. She always looked perfect. That was part of her weapon. Babe. She floated over, champagne already in hand. Doesn't everything look amazing? Perfect, I said. She introduced me to 3 new clients she'd invited. Potential victims who didn't know it yet. I shook their hands, memorized their names for Thaddeus. At 7:15, Bram walked in. He wore an expensive suit I'd probably paid for. Walked straight to Seraphine, kissed her cheek, lingering a second too long. Then turned to me with that practiced smile. Soren. Congratulations, man. You got the best one. I certainly got something special, I said, shaking his hand. We did the rehearsal walkthrough. The wedding coordinator Seraphine had hired, with my money, for a service that wouldn't exist, guided us through the ceremony positions. I stood at the altar spot, watching Seraphine practice her walk down the aisle. She was radiant. Confident. Completely unaware. Dinner was served at 8. Salmon for her side, beef for mine. I barely touched my plate. At 8:40, I stood up, tapping my glass. I'd like to say something. The room quieted. Seraphine beamed at me, probably expecting the romantic speech she'd coached me on. 3 years ago, I met someone who changed my life. Seraphine taught me so much about trust. About partnership. About seeing what's really there versus what we want to see. She dabbed at her eyes. Her mother was already crying. In my work as a toxicologist, I study contamination. How poison spreads through systems. How it hides. How it destroys things from the inside while looking perfectly normal on the surface. Seraphine's smile flickered slightly. But the most important thing I've learned is that once you identify the contamination, you have to remove it. Completely. Or it keeps poisoning everything it touches. I clicked the remote. The first slide appeared. Our first photo together. This was taken 3 years ago. We looked happy. Click. This was taken last year. Still smiling. Click. A bank statement. This was taken from our joint account. Notice the withdrawals. The room shifted. Murmurs started. Click. Another statement. These invoices are from Seraphine's company. Services that were never delivered. Soren, what are you doing? Seraphine stood, her voice sharp. Click. The video from the airport lounge. Her and Bram. The money. The kiss. Gasps. Her mother's champagne glass hit the floor. But that's not even the best part, I said. Etta, would you stand up? Etta rose. She stole 200,000 from me. I have the receipts. The other victims stood one by one. each stating their loss. Seraphine's face had gone white. Bram was edging toward the door. "Thaddeus," I said. "Now would be good." Thaddeus stepped forward with the papers. "Seraphine LaRue, you're being served with a civil asset freezing order. Your accounts are now locked pending investigation." The plainclothes detective removed his catering apron, badge visible. "Ms. LaRue, I need you to remain here." Chaos erupted. Seraphine's clients backing away. Her family in shock. Cameras clicking, Miranda's photographer not even trying to hide anymore. Then the main doors opened. Bram walked back in. But he wasn't alone. Federal agents flanked him. And he was in handcuffs. "Sorry, babe," Bram said to Seraphine, his voice carrying across the silent room. "They offered me a deal." The federal agents weren't gentle as they guided him forward. Special Agent Patricia Morse, whom I recognized from the news, stepped to the center of the room. "Seraphine LaRue, you're under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit securities fraud." Seraphine's legs gave out. She dropped into her chair, staring at Bram like she was seeing him for the first time. "You set me up," she whispered. "No," Agent Morse corrected. "He rolled on you 3 days ago when we caught him moving insider trading profits through his shadow accounts. Turns out your boyfriend was using the fraud money to buy illegal stock tips. When we traced the money back." She gestured at the projection screen, still showing Seraphine's bank transfers. "Well, Dr. Vale's investigation made our job much easier. I hadn't known about the insider trading. That was a gift from the universe, or maybe just the natural consequence of greedy people being greedy." "Bram told us everything," Morse continued. "How you masterminded the fraud scheme. How you selected victims. How you used your relationship with Dr. Vale as credibility cover. He even provided recordings." She held up a phone. Bram's phone. Audio started playing through the venue's speakers, Seraphine's voice, clear and contemptuous. "Soren's the perfect mark. Successful enough that no one questions my lifestyle, boring enough that he doesn't pay attention. 3 more months and I'll have enough to disappear. Let him have his little wedding fantasy." My mother gasped. My father's face went dark with rage. The recording continued. "The beauty is, he's so focused on his test tubes and contamination reports, he never looks at what's right in front of him. I could rob him blind at breakfast and he'd thank me for the coffee." I felt nothing. No anger. No hurt. Just the same clarity I get when I finally identify a contamination source. Problem identified. Solution implemented. Seraphine found her voice. That's taken out of context. "Bram, tell them." But Bram was already being led away. "I told them everything, Sarah. My lawyer says I'll get minimum security. 3 to 5 instead of 15 to 20. Worth it." "You bastard." She lunged at him, but the agents caught her. "We were partners." "No," Bram laughed. "You were the boss. I was just following orders. That's what I told them, anyway. And you know what? They believed me. Especially after I showed them the contracts where you explicitly directed the fraud." Agent Morse nodded to her team. They cuffed Seraphine right there, in front of everyone. Her mother was sobbing. Her father had already left. "Dr. Vale," Morse said to me, "we'll need your full cooperation with the investigation." "You'll have it. Everything's documented." Seraphine looked at me then. Really looked at me. "You knew. How long have you known?" "Since I found your second phone," I said. "The one in your spare tire compartment." Her face crumbled. "I was going to tell you. After the wedding. I was going to rob me and disappear. Yes, I heard the recording." "I loved you," she said, as they started leading her away. "No," I said. "You loved what I represented. Stability you could exploit. Respectability you could hide behind. A boring scientist who wouldn't ask questions." She was almost at the door when she turned back. "The venue. The catering. It's all non-refundable. That'll cost you thousands." I actually smiled. "About that. I bought the venue 6 weeks ago. Through a shell company. The catering? Paid for by the FBI as part of the sting operation. Even your dress," I nodded at her white rehearsal dress, "was purchased with the $50,000 you had me wire. We traced it all." The last thing I saw was her face, the moment she realized she'd been played with her own playbook. 3 months later, I got the call. Seraphine got 7 years. Bram got 4. The victims were made whole from the seized assets, Over 2 million when they found all the hidden accounts. I sold the venue, donated the proceeds to a fraud victims fund. My colleagues never treated me differently. If anything, they respected the methodical approach. You treated her like contamination, my lab partner said. Identified, contained, removed. I moved to a different city. Fresh start. New lab. Still doing what I do best, finding poisons and removing them from systems. I kept one thing from the relationship. The engagement ring. Not from sentiment, but as a reminder. Sometimes contamination comes in beautiful packages. My phone buzzes. Unknown number. I delete it without reading. Some things don't deserve a second chance to poison you. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you really like our videos, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day.